tuning in to the Justin Henry Show. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, join in on the conversation, and follow on all social media platforms. What's good, guys? Welcome to Start and Sits. I'm going to be trying to do like this morning coffee thing. It'll be branded here very differently soon, but I want to get you guys start and sits for week one. Try to give you guys a condensed version of this. If you've seen my live videos, you know I go through every single team, but it's probably tough to go through and watch every single video every single minute. So I want to give you guys a condensed version of week one starts and sits. From now on through the rest of the season, it'll be all different types of quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends at the position. So before we get started on that, I do want to at least get through this part and tell you guys, I'm not going to be going through a lot of the brand name players, right? You're not going to be benching Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to be benching your Travis Kelce's. You're not benching Christian McCaffrey. So what I'm going to do is give you guys the fringe players, right? The players that you may have a question about, the players that you might be deciding between that they're 2-3 points off difference in your lineups. So I want to go through those players, the ones that are really hard start and sits. And then obviously we'll still have the Sunday start and sit show, but that's like a little bit more, that's going to be a little bit more of rapid fire. And I don't have a chance to fully give out my analysis on why. So I'm going to go through 3 players starts, 3 players sits. You guys can give feedback in the comments. This is not a live recording, obviously. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, if you don't like what I have to say, trust the projections. Like, projections are probably going to be a lot more accurate than your specific knowledge. And then when you're deciding between a few different players, right, let me be the person that helps you that decides that for you, right? If you're just like, I don't want to make this decision, that's where I come in. This is where some of the research comes in. So I wouldn't start any of the starts. I'm not starting them over the reliables and the sits. I'm not benching the reliables in those situations either. So just because a matchup's favorable doesn't mean that's automatically going to go ahead of the more talented player, okay? Want to get that out. Week one start and sits. We're going to start with the quarterbacks, okay? So my first start of the week, this is probably the smash of the week. And I know this isn't really this isn't necessarily a debatable quarterback, but this is one that I love, right? Justin Herbert versus the Dolphins. The Dolphins last season were the 31st ranked defense. And while I think they'll be much improved with the addition of Vic Fangio, Justin Herbert is set up for success week one. All the receivers that they have, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Joshua Palmer, and you got first round pick Quentin Johnson, not to mention Austin Eckler out the backfield, Gerald Everett at the tight end position. This team's locked and loaded and ready to go. And you bring in the addition of Kellen Moore. This team's planning on airing things out. And last year, Justin Herbert had them crack ribs. So I think week one, we see an explosive performance from this team. And this could be a shootout with the Miami Dolphins. So no Jalen Ramsey on the Dolphins side. So for them, they are down majorly in their secondary. Even though the team has Vic Fangio, and I think they'll be improved as the season goes on, there are some question marks that still remain. So Justin Herbert versus the Dolphins, I love the pick there. Yeah, my next start of the week is Anthony Richardson versus the Jags, right? First game for Anthony Richardson. He's a rookie, but I don't think there should be any worries, right? When you talk about Anthony Richardson, this is a guy that we know can be explosive with his legs. He looked a little erratic in preseason, but there was some strong plays that he was making as well. This Jags team did give up points to the quarterback, and I assume that the Jags are going to be up at some point in this game, right? So what's Anthony Richardson going to have to do? Rely on his arms and his legs, and I'm sure the Jags defense will back off at some point. So the game script supports Anthony Richardson having a strong effort. Whether it's 150 yards in the air, maybe he gets a rushing score. I believe in the legs in Anthony Richardson, in the athleticism. So I'm sure he'll make a couple rookie plays, boneheaded plays. But if you drafted him, I would get him in my lineup. There's no question about it. I see the upside. And would it surprise you if he buzzed it off a 40-yard run? Would it surprise you if he had 2 rushing scores? It wouldn't, right? So for me, I know this game script fits very well for Anthony Richardson. He's one of my starts of the week. Baker Mayfield, next on the starts of the week, versus the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Vikings defense is putrid, right? And Baker Mayfield with the Rams was better than people think. It's not like he was just the worst quarterback in the league when he was with the Rams. They didn't have a whole lot of weapons, and he still performed well. You pair that with a team that does have some pretty good weapons, pretty mediocre offensive line play. But when you talk about Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, Rachaad White out the backfield, these are legitimate weapons for Baker Mayfield, who played pretty decently in the preseason. So they're on the road against a 22nd ranked defense. last year against wide receivers for fantasy purposes. And we know that the Minnesota Vikings are going to be throwing the football. Right, Jettas, Christian Kirk, they got Jordan Addison in the first round. So this is for sure, we're going to be seeing, fireworks, at least from the Viking side. I think the Bucs can keep up. And so this defense got worse for Minnesota. Baker, a lot of low expectations. This is a guy in super flex leagues. I'd be okay with starting as your QB2 if you had a questionable decision. And if you're looking for a dart throw in DFS, this might be the play. So for me, I'm all in on I like Baker Mayfield in the matchup that he has against the Vikings. When it comes to quarterback fades, the first on the list is Deshaun Watson versus the Bengals. Now, look, this Cleveland offense is going to be improved, right? It's not like this Cleveland offense didn't go through a major overhaul. They did invest in the passing game. They're going to try to get Nick Chubb more involved in the passing game. So I see Deshaun Watson being better. He was using his legs in the preseason, which is a good sign. But they're up against the second ranked. The Bengals gave up the second fewest points to quarterbacks last year, and I think that could be a trend here in week 1 as well. I want to see what this offense does, right? Deshaun Watson, he didn't look like himself in the second half of last year. So can Deshaun Watson bounce back, right? Can he be the quarterback that we saw in Houston? And I think that still remains to be seen. So I think where Deshaun Watson could be good is on the ground against this Bengals pass rush. And this pick could backfire. This could be a backfire pick. But for week 1, I would exercise a little bit of caution with Deshaun Watson if I had another more stable player. So if you had a Geno Smith, if you had another – maybe not Geno Smith, because I'm going to talk about him in a second when it comes to fades, but just a more reliable option, a Derek Carr, an Aaron Rodgers, somebody like that has just a little bit more of a floor. Even Geno Smith, I'll probably start him over, even though I'm about to talk about him right now. For Geno Smith, right? He's another fade that I have. Geno Smith versus the Rams. Not a lot of upside, in my opinion, versus the Rams, right? I know they don't have Jalen Ramsey anymore, but when you bring back Aaron Donald, who missed some time last year, he's going to be involved as far as disrupting the pass, right? This game projects, obviously, to be in Seattle's favor as well, going up against the Rams with no Cooper Kupp. The Rams are probably going to struggle to move the ball downfield at times against the Seattle defense. And JSN's banged up too. Like Jackson Smith-Njigba, highly touted rookie coming out of Ohio State, number 1 pick for the Seahawks this year. He's banged up still. He's going to be on the field, but he's going to be banged up. So for Geno Smith, I think the weapons will be there, but this feels like a game where once they get in control, they'll lean on their other picks. Kenneth Walker in the second round last year, Zach Charbonnet in the second round this year. They're going to lean on those picks to close this game out. So while I think this passing attack will be good over the course of the year, I'd exercise a little bit of caution with week 1 with Geno Smith if I had another upside option that I could start, especially somebody that I mentioned in the first one. Like if you had an Anthony Richardson, I'm starting him over Geno Smith this week. And then the last player that I'm fading at the quarterback position is Daniel Jones versus the Dallas Cowboys. It could be a long night for Daniel Jones, right? We talked about I've talked all offseason about the Darren Waller edition and how I think it could help, but it's probably a little bit overlooked in fantasy, or a little bit overvalued in fantasy. I think it's still overvalued in fantasy this season. Darren Waller should be okay. He's going to be the main target for Daniel Jones, but it could be a long night on Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys. We talk about the pass rush with Micah Parsons, and that's easy to see. But the addition of Stephon Gilmore to a Dallas defense that was already stout against the quarterback last season is going to make life a lot harder for Daniel Jones. And not to mention the fact that he's got receivers, but there's no dominant receivers on this Giants team that's going to be able to beat a lot of the top members of the secondary for the Cowboys. You talk about guys like Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Isaiah Hodgins, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, Jamison Crowder, excuse me. There's just a lot of ball to go around for some mediocre targets. Maybe he spreads things out, but there's no ceiling, even using his legs. I just don't see a whole lot for Daniel Jones in the passing game. So while the weapons may look better on paper, I think this is stacking up to be a Saquon Barkley type game, like typically like he does against the Cowboys. For Daniel Jones, could be a slower night on the field. So I'm benching. If I have another option, I'm definitely playing over Daniel Jones in 2 QB leagues. I'd be looking for another option. I'm okay if you have to start him in your super flex leagues, but could be a slower day at the office for Daniel Jones. So That does it for today's quarterback starts and fades. I will be back with running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. You'll see the videos dropping. Like I said, I'm going to try a little something new here on the page, get you guys more dialed in information. That way you guys can win more leagues. So hopefully this was helpful. If it is, let me know in the comments. If there's any other quarterbacks that you have questions on, drop them in the comments. I'll give you guys my feedback. Other than that, it's been real. Peace out for the next one.